our second event of the year. We're so excited to roll out the Tequity HUB from Gals and Gear. If you haven't heard about it already, you can go to our website at galsandgear.tv and learn more. I'm Amy DeLouise, and I'm the founder of Gals and Gear and your host today. And I have two fantastic guests with us today, allies and media experts, to talk about allyship. Christopher Franklin from ABC 24 Memphis, and Nicki Sun joining us from Anaheim and the home of the new Nicki Sun show. So welcome to both of you. And I will share a little bit of your backgrounds before we get started on our topic. Chris has got a long history in the broadcast industry, 25 years of experience developing brands. He can produce videos, design motion graphics. He's done it all. He's worked at Fox television stations and Guardsmark, and in the evangelical community. He ran all of the media productions at Hope Church for 10 years, which is like running 15 broadcasts a week at a minimum. And so he's really got a lot of experience, a bunch of Emmys in his pocket, a proud grad of Fisk University in Nashville. So welcome, Chris. So lovely to have you.
Glad to be here.
And Nicki is a producer, director, tech guru, sought-after host who has been interviewing the world's most influential creators in the tech and entertainment space since 2009. She launched Now You Know to amplify creatives in the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community, as we call AAPI, I think. And she then launched Tech Nicki Speaking to spotlight women and creators of color in film. And now she is on a mission to rebrand as the Nicki Sun Show, covering all your favorite creators. So thanks for taking time out from all of that, Nicki, to join us today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So for those of us just joining, our topic is allyship. And please throw a comment in the chat. I'd love to see what brought you to this discussion today. Why you're here, what you hope to leave with. So just throw some of those comments down as we're getting started. And the reality is, most of us have parts of our identity that have privilege and others that don't. I took a fantastic workshop on this recently at Infocom, and we had to diagram ourselves based on questions around privilege that went way beyond race and gender to things like, do you own a home? Did your parents go to college? Do you speak more than one language? Are you part of an organized religion? Do you have a disability? That really just got us thinking about our positions of privilege and what they mean for our lives. And so the point is, whether or not you're part of a quote unquote minority group, you may have privilege that allows you to make an impact for others who are. Because that's what allyship really is. It's about using your power and your privilege to advance other people who might not have that same advantage. So that's part of our mission at Gals and Gear, to be sure that women of all backgrounds, whether assigned a gender at birth or not, have access to skills, have strong professional networks, have visibility in the industry, and a community that empowers them to succeed. And we're just so glad you're all part of our Gals and Gear community today. I do want to take one quick moment to shout out our community members in Hawaii. We have several on the ground there, and they've asked us to please share a link for supporting the Maui wildfire relief effort, which is another way you can be an ally today. So I have the link on our homepage at galsandgear.tv. So if you just go there, you'll find information about what a local community organization is doing, what the Red Cross is doing, and how you can support. So thank you in advance for that. Chris, let me start with you. You've been in broadcast a long time. How has the makeup of the newsroom changed, both before and behind the camera? And have you seen any examples of impactful allyship in the workplace?
Yeah, I guess I had a long, almost like sabbatical from from the newsroom. I left the industry in 2006, the television news industry. And I came back in 2020, mainly because of Tegna. And so when I came back in 2020, it was a fresh look as to what the newsroom looked like. In 2006, and even obviously historically going back, the news was told from a white male perspective. The imagery that was being used, the language that was being used. And so coming into 2020, post-pandemic, a lot of the voices that are there, a lot of the stories that are being told, a lot of the perspectives that are being given, the newsroom looks and feels different. And so, part of what, I was inspired to come back to the newsroom for was because I felt like this was the moment to impact the world outside. Obviously, I came from the church world, but this was a way to impact the world in a positive way and have voices be heard that weren't what were historically heard in the past. So, yeah, that's pretty, I guess, my perspective on how it's changed.
And is there something you think that people could do, sort of an act of allyship, if you will, if they're in a workplace where they could make it more welcoming for minorities and women specifically in that setting?
Most definitely. We have to make minorities, women VIPs. And so what I mean by that, you have to show them value. You have to give them value. You have to make sure that they have influence and that they have power. It's one thing to be in the room, but it's another to let your voice be heard. And then obviously put people in positions of power to help make some of those calls. So yeah, VIP, I think that's the best way to kind of sum it up.
Nicki, that probably resonates with you because I know you're, a director, producer, content creator, spokesperson, and you've done a lot to amplify marginalized voices, especially in the AAPI community, what we might call public allyship, really, because you're, out there on your YouTube channel and other public places, social media. What made you feel like that was essential for you to do?
10 years ago when I started my YouTube channel, it looked very, very different. We didn't have Crazy Rich Asians. We didn't have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We didn't have Fresh Off the Boat, but we did have YouTube, which we did not have to get permission to tell our stories and wait for mainstream Hollywood to put our faces on TV. So back then, I felt like a lot of my fellow AAPI voices were not getting the recognition or the spotlight that they deserved. Incredible, talented people. The only difference was our skin color. And I was like, just fresh out of college, I'm like, no one's going to hire, like a 3-acronym word is not going to hire this punk kid out of college. I don't want to grab coffee runs or whatever, because it's like what I want to do hasn't been seen before. So it's like, how do I relieve that pressure? I just got to create it myself. So I started my YouTube channel to really just start interviewing and spotlighting like Asian American artists, but in addition to API artists, like indie artists, like music, because music is universal. And I've always been trying to figure out, as I've studied communication in my college, years, the best way to bridge communities, because I'm all about community bridging, allyship, as we now call it. I don't think it was called allyship back then, but now it's just, it's feels really good to see that our voices are there, but it's not like our community has been dormant for the past 10 years. It's just, we haven't been given the interest or the resources or the financial backing to feel that our voices are valid. And I resonate with, what Chris is saying is like, you need to feel like valid in what you're doing. And if you're not, apparently, as a Capricorn, I hear that I'm in my villain era, and that just means that we are tired of just being stepped on, and we are knowing our boundaries, and we stand up for what is right and what we believe in. So now I'm just going forward with this new attitude, leaving imposter syndrome behind, and I'm taking everybody with me who just is an ally. So I just feel like it's shifted from it was necessary, but now that it's getting more prominent out there, we need to work with our fellow communities like I've always been trying to do, because now we are a part of the conversation and we need to continue being a part of the conversation.
So what is something that people who are joining us today could do to become a better ally for the AAPI community specifically?
Well, first and foremost, my heart goes out to everybody in Maui. I feel like even in the generation of TikTok and Instagram, our generation is calling out people who have frequented like places like Hawaii, utilized it for their backgrounds or their videos or their sponsorships or their honeymoons, and they're silent. So the thing about this generation is you won't get away with that. They will call you out. They will tag people like, hey, I saw you like, in Hawaii, like, why don't you use some of your resources and actually promote this? But that also gets into like a tricky conversation too. We talk about it all the time. Like sometimes you want to do something, but you're afraid of posting something that may get you canceled or may get you like in a different area. So I would say like for the young generation utilizing social media, like just I would say be more mindful of like what you're posting. Like maybe telling people you're about to vacation in Hawaii when the Maui fires just happened is not really great timing. But then at the same time, I have also learned that in order to be interesting, you have to be interested. So I would just say like in our communities, like what you're interested in, figure out how to be as diverse as possible. Reach out to the actual people who have built these infrastructures to create a community and be a part and be involved, like be interested. Like personally, I'm just interested in like everybody that's not a part of my like specific ethnic group, but that's how I'm able to share my culture with other people, is by being interested in what other people are doing outside of me. So I would say that's the biggest step, and that's the easiest way. Is like it doesn't have to be in terms of race, but just even like other communities that might teach you how to taiko drum or you know, a dance. Like just be interested and do that. But I think that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah, we're going to talk in our breakouts about sort of this process of allyship, and you're talking about what's now being called the active learner phase. And I think it's so important. I know these all have these new names now, Nicki, so it's not like we were doing this before it had like a whole process around it, apparently. And it's so important because if you don't learn about other cultures, if you don't learn about people who aren't like you, it's really hard to be allies. So I think active learning is really, really important. And it's a great point that, you know, you don't have to just jump right into some very specific, you know, vocal thing, but it's just like maybe taking a beat and learning about something and learning about that culture is a really important step to allyship. Chris, I'm wondering if, you know, one of your recent LinkedIn posts that really hit me hard was you talked about daily affirmations. And you specifically talked about sharing one with your niece to be sure she felt she was beautiful and enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that just really resonated with me. I mean, you know, as a woman, I mean, we have all these body image things that go on from, you know, childhood basically. And, you know, Barbie is out now. So it's all, you know, all the rage to talk about it. But we were all dealing with it like from the way back. And I'm just, you know, to me, that was such an act of allyship. And I just wondered why you felt you needed to remind her of that.
Well, there's a entire story behind all of that. First off, you know, my wife and I are raising our niece, and she's had a lot of life challenges that have put her in a position where she is uncertain of herself. And so we've been, you know, my wife is a licensed professional counselor, so the things that she does are very intentional in child rearing and raising. So, you know, that post was almost a very positive post about her, but some of those affirmations are sometimes a little more difficult, harder conversations. For those who haven't seen the post, I encourage you to go check it out. But in essence, it is, you know, the question was, how long have you been pretty? Is what I asked her. And then her response, after she didn't answer the first time, she's supposed to say all my life. And so as I begin to keep asking her that day after day, she becomes more confident in that. And then after about 2 weeks or so, she's got sass and everything else with it. So it's really cool how far she's come. But as we try to be, you know, allies, as we are allies in the workplace or in mentorship, I mean, the number one thing you can do is care, which is another version of love. I love my niece, but I also care for my team members and my coworkers. And so I think that's the way to do it. You really have to, you know, if you want daily affirmations, you want to do them for yourself, but you also want to do that for those in the industry, those in your team, those who you want to be aligned with.
Right. Well, and I know, Nicki, you relate to this too, right? Because you've made many Instagram posts that I've seen about sort of having to tell yourself that you're enough. Why is that such an important thing for allies to understand this sort of self-doubt dynamic, especially for people who haven't always had sort of the official seat at the table, whatever that looks like in their particular world?
Oh gosh. I mean, like I feel like as I've learned and grown and really surrounded myself with amazing allies and people, a lot of the times when I talk, especially to young women, a lot of the things that have held them back is their self-belief and their self-doubt, this imposter syndrome that I'm not good enough. We see it portrayed many, many times in media that it does come from a white male perspective. And how does my voice matter in this? So I think a lot of the times, you know, when we celebrate our wins, women are kind of shamed into like, you're bragging or your ego. I'm like, men do it all the time, so why can't women? You know, like, so what I like to do on my show now is just kind of like a go off feature, in where I'm like, go off queen, like tell everybody like what you've been up to, and just normalizing that it is absolutely like amazing what you're doing, and you should be sharing it, not feeling ashamed that, oh, someone's gonna think that you're bragging. It's also coming with a lot of my friends work in HR, and every single time they're like, we got this perfect person for the role. She's never asked to negotiate for a higher raise, and technically we don't. That makes us look better to the management that we didn't have to spend more. But I'm like, as an ally, you should let her know that, hey, you should renegotiate at this rate. No one's gonna tell us. And those people, believe it or not, are doing like the greater gift of the world in letting people know that every time I grant a job position to a man, he automatically asks for a raise and he gets it. It's just because there needs to be a more transparency. So when it comes to pay, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to sharing that, I share that immediately, because I'm like, this is what's happening. You're just saying that. So I've kind of exercised my right in like just pay transparency over the past years in organizations. And if it's not how it needs to be done, I speak up. I had a situation where I just like exited a current situation where I felt like I was being held as the token again. And the entire organization is white males, and they want to pay me less because I'm being paid more than the others. But it's like, I do a very, very different job. And it's just standing up for yourself. So I feel like I've come into this age where I was not very confident as a kid of what I was doing, especially because I didn't see faces like mine. It's like, who am I to have a show named after me? Who am I to create and produce and direct and hire other people or interview people? And so now it really is coming full circle, where I was a unnamed show by Nicki's son, and I'm just coming out, you know, really strong this year and saying I can and I will produce and host and direct the Nicki Sun show. And it's like been so affirming to go back to people who I've been wanting to interview on a very short list, and they're like, it's about damn time. And yes, I would love to be interviewed by you. So I'm just like, I just want every single person, especially young women, to just realize they are enough. They just, existing is enough. You don't have to be this, that, whatever, but existing is enough. And if you have like an intentions to create like impact, there's definitely more people that are supporting you than that are against you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think you make a really great point about sort of shouting out your own accomplishments, and how we're kind of taught not to do that, that somehow it's not appropriate for a young lady to, you know, tout herself. And one thing that I remember, a really great ally for GALSNGEAR and many, many people in the industry, Katie Hinson, who's now at Disney Marvel. She was a co-founder of the Blue Collar Post Collective, which is another great organization that people should check out. They're on both the West Coast and the East Coast. And she used to always post in their chat on Facebook, you know, what are you proud of this week? Every Friday she posts that, and it just was so affirming to everybody in that group, which is, you know, a lot of younger people who are, and people who are socioeconomically disadvantaged from being in the post industry, to be able to shout out their accomplishments to each other. I mean, I think those kind of forums are really important. So that is something we're all about at GALSNGEAR, which is why we love having you as part of GALSNGEAR, Nicki. So thank you for doing that. Chris, I want to sort of talk about people who aren't necessarily part of our media world all the time, because you've really done a great job with your Inspire Media Conference that you produce in the Memphis area, for people who are often left out of the other big digital storyteller conferences that happen in Vegas or New York or LA, that don't come to your region. And you've specifically focused on people in nonprofits and faith-based media. And I'm just curious why you decided to do that and why it's so important to you to bring this kind of upskilling to that community.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you asking about that. Hope Church is where I used to be the director of media production, and it's considered a mega church. Sanctuary seats 5,000, stadium seating, blah, 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 blah. But, we have the resources, the professional development budget to send our team to the NAB conference because the level of production that we had required us to get some experiences that help prepare us to put forth a stellar program
That's how we met.
That's right. That's how we met. She stopped and talked to me probably about 15. I know she had another session to go to, but she talked to me about 15 minutes after a panel discussion. I really appreciated that. But yeah, the NAB conference, all the churches in the Memphis area, geographically, it's on the corner of 3 states in the Mid-South, and we're almost a stepbrother to Nashville. Everyone thinks of Tennessee, they think of Nashville. And so, no one really, like conferences wise, they don't come here for stuff like that. They go to Orlando, they go to New York, they go to LA, they go to Vegas. And so there are so many churches who I then became a resource for. And instead of the next year, I sacrificed my professional development budget. And instead of sending my team there, I brought great talent, best of the best. Amy, I brought you to Memphis and allowed people to have hands-on interactions with you all and ask those same questions that I was asking in their environment. So, I mean, that's the reason I did it. I didn't do it selfishly for me. I did it for the community that doesn't get that access.
Well, and it's made a huge difference. So, and I think this is just an incredible way to be an ally. When you see that there's something that's missing, you just jump in and you do it and you figure out how to bootstrap it and make it happen for that community. And I know that community really benefits from your resources, but also your connections and your wisdom and your understanding of sort of the tools that they need to bring to what the stories are that they're telling. So it's really fantastic. And I would highly recommend Memphis barbecue. I got to taste some when I was there and it's some of the best. So it's really fabulous. And we'll make sure that people know how to get to the conference, which is the inspiremediaconference.com, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Because maybe they know somebody who's in that region who would like to get some of that expertise, and that would be a great way for them to do it. Now, Nicki, I know that one of the ways that you have been your own ally is to be sure you have the floor, so to speak, right? You're an on-camera personality. You've also been behind the camera, but when you're in front of the camera, you get to say what you want to say. And I know that, we've all had experiences of being interrupted, being minimized, being shut out, literally not having a voice. So what can people do who maybe don't have the Nicki Sun Show? Or a big public platform, what can they do to speak up for themselves? You mentioned pay equity. What are some other things that they could do to speak up for themselves or to be allies for others in the room who they see are not able to speak up?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's like a clear answer. I think it's just for me as I've gotten more confident, and it really has been, and I don't know if it's too woo-woo, but my thing has been, it's been really accepting myself. And then it's like the whole, like, once you love yourself, once you learn how to love and accept yourself, you can learn to love and accept others. But I feel like it's just been, I've kind of just always played nice with people growing up. And I feel now that as I play nice, it's getting mistaken as being walked on for certain things. Yeah. And I think, especially as a female, even at, when we go to like NAB show or GALSNGEAR Expo or all these very tech heavy places, before I was like, oh, I got to dress a certain way. I got to wear long sleeves. I have to like put no makeup. Like, why am I diminishing myself to fit into this projection of what women are supposed to look and sound like in the tech field? What does it mean to not wear like my cheongsam during hosting a Verizon Lunar New Year or something? Like what does it mean? So to me, it's like I've been limiting myself of what I can actually be and do, because I think of all the other factors before putting myself out there. And so I would say step one is to feel like, how do I show up as my authentic self every day? How do I not compromise who I am in these spaces first and foremost? And if that means like dressing a certain way, looking a certain way, sounding a certain way, like don't compromise on that. And I think that really helps with the confidence to be able to speak, because when you're confident and you feel good, you're able to project your best self into the world. You're able to meet people and just show up as yourself versus someone that you're not. So that would be my biggest area of how to first tackle it. Like everyone can do that within themselves and identify like, what have I been doing that has made me feel like I've been living sort of like a lie to myself to fit into what societal standards are, and then seek those people who you really admire and want to get to know and just have conversations. Right now, currently, I have conversations with both men and women who pull me to the side and say, hey, can we just like chat? And I'm like, the most of the time is because they start with like, I don't think I can. And I'm like, you absolutely can. What's holding you back? And it's really just limiting beliefs. Like really with every young person I've talked to is like, I just don't think I can do it. So that would be my step first and foremost. Obviously there's a lot more tangible items, but that would be like where I would do my own self-diagnosis.
Well, and I would suggest, I mean, I love the sort of one-on-one conversation too. I mean, I have 15-minute meetings that people can schedule with me through a link on my LinkedIn. And often they're people who are feeling like they're stuck in some aspect of their career in our industry. I know that Kylie Pena, who works at Adobe and has been one of our big allies, she often will post on her various social channels, like, I have a little bit of time on these days, and I'm happy to talk to somebody who's trying to break into this industry to give you tips, you know, and she'll give sort of blocks of time, you know, whenever she can. I mean, I think these are just ways to be really intentional about allyship and make space for having those conversations with people. To give them that confidence. And maybe, you know, it's really just even having the conversation with you is part of that journey that each person is taking. Anything you want to add to that, Chris?
No, I mean, spot on. I don't think I can add anything additional. I just really think this conversation needs to happen. But again, as she kind of pointed out, some people don't know how to have it. And it's even a communication barrier in the generations and how to have that conversation. Even, you know, from phone calls to emails to Teams messages to, you know, they just from face to face, sometimes it's very difficult to know how to start a difficult conversation. And so most people just ignore it and quit or leave. It's just, it needs to happen.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm reading a book called The Good Guys that's really an interesting discussion of allyship, and it's got some really good suggestions in it. So I will also put that on our website. And one of the things I'm also learning about is really kind of moving through, I guess, what I'd call a flow from unconscious bias to silent observer to active learner. We talked about that with Nicki. And then challenging situations that you see that you think are not right, or participating in an active way, and championing, which is really, you know, taking a really active role with a particular issue or a group of people or one particular person that you are championing. So it's kind of a whole process that we go through to make those intentions. And it's not an easy one, because we all have our own biases. We all have our own places that we came from and assumptions that we make about people, etc. So it's a constant learning, I think. And I don't know, here at Gals and Gear, we're just all about empowering women to empower themselves, you know, and I think that's one reason I'm so excited about our upskilling initiative, because I feel like when women feel competent and confident to take their next career step, and then they have that community to support them, and maybe could reach out to a mentor, an ally, that lets them do it themselves. We're not going to do it for them, but we want to give people the tools to do what they want to do with their career. Well, I think what I'd love to do now, there's only a handful of people here, so I thought we could just jump into the cafe and be a little more relaxed about a conversation, because I'd love to hear from other people what allyship looks like to them. So what we're going to do is we're going to end the recording, and I'm going to just do one more shout out to everybody here to thank Nicki's son, Chris Franklin, for being here, taking time to be with us today. Don't forget to go to our homepage, GALSNGEAR.tv, to learn more about what we're doing on the Tequity Hub. And we have many events coming up all the way through the end of the year and all the way into next year. And also don't forget to donate to the Hawaii relief effort. We have a button there with some information as well.